I'd like to bring out Eugene, who will bring light to why I made that intro. Eugene, come on out. Here is the power, my friend.
What's going on, everyone? How are we? Oh, I see some familiar faces. Man, how do you work this thing? What's the metaverse really? So, I'm sure this week at NFT.NYC, you guys have heard the term metaverse used so much, right? What is it? Come to my metaverse. We're building a metaverse. Or these companies are building separate multiverses. And I gotta tell you, that doesn't kind of sit with me very well. So, are we not? There we go. So, before I get into it, I do wanna take you back a little bit, back to October 29th, 1969, when we had the very first computer-to-computer transmission. It was from UCLA to Stanford. And this moment brought about something we called the ARPANET. And for years, we sent packets from one computer to another, down the pipeline until it finally reached its destination. Well, years later, we adopted this thing called TCP/IP standard, right? And that's actually the protocols that we use today on the internet. And in 1993, Congress passed a set of regulations that allowed commercial content on the internet. And this opened the doors for innovation. It opened the doors for advertising. And it brought in money into the ecosystem it needed for innovation, right? And this is what kicked off the information age, the true Web 1, where you could type in a website and you could look for information and it would just very slowly, show up in front of you, right? Well, like all things, evolution happens. And we started developing this thing called social media. And that is really the second generation of the internet, the social age, and that is the current generation that you and I are currently in, right? We tend to get together and we're like, oh, we're in a Web 2 world and we're looking forward to the Web 3 world. Well, the Web 3 world is the metaverse, right? And so much we hear the term used, usually by the NFT community, that it's really used as a extra word to describe a virtual world or a closed ecosystem. And that kind of goes against the entire idea of bringing everybody together, right? Nobody wants a closed ecosystem. And one of the big reasons why it got turned into a buzzword is Facebook decided to become Meta, right? They wanted to guard the name. They wanted to gatekeep it. And a lot of people were like, yeah, they had a lot of negative connotations that they wanted to remove themselves from. And I have a little bit of a different idea. So this is called the social media life cycle. And it's something that I like to use to illustrate how social media companies can evolve and get adoption and can become successful. And it really goes into 4 phases. The first phase is the startup phase. I have an idea. I want to build an MVP. I want to bring some kind of new collaboration tool to the market where I see a need to be filled. And if it's a good idea, you might see it go to phase 2, which is seed funding, where companies actually go, hey, we love your idea, we want to be a part of it, here's a lot of money. You'll go through several rounds of seed funding and evaluations and probably eventually an IPO. And that's where you're reaching phase 3, growth, right? That's when you get the massive adoption. That's when news organizations start talking about what the CEOs of these companies are doing because it actually affects people. And the 4th is called the can't fail or critical mass. And what happens when you have a social media platform and you can't add any more users, right? people start leaving. Nobody wants to be on the same platform, or no kid wants to be on the same platform that their grandma is on. Grandma, you talk too much about your bunions. I'm leaving. I'm going to Snapchat. I'm going to TikTok. And they were like, okay, so since we can't go up, why don't we go sideways? So they bought this company called Oculus. They decided to get into augmented reality lenses. They launched a platform called Horizons. And this is all because they know exactly where the internet is evolving to, the metaverse. Now, there's a very smart guy by the name of John Radoff who created this thing called the 7 layers of the metaverse. Unfortunately, NFT.NYC doesn't allow more than 10 words per slide, so some stuff is missing. So that's my bad. But when you get a chance, go onto Google, look up the 7 layers of the metaverse. It is one of the best illustrations of exactly how the entire ecosystem is going to be laid out, because the metaverse isn't a single platform. It's the entire internet and the underlying ecosystem of technologies that make it up. Now, because we are at NFT.NYC, and our topic is NFTs, and so many of these projects are saying, we want to build a virtual world for our community, and they've probably heard me talk, go, is that still a good idea? I say absolutely, because there are so many beneficial aspects to virtual reality, to having virtual worlds. And whenever I get up on stage and I talk about the benefits of VR and XR, these are the 3 use cases I bring up. The first one is called helping burn victims. Now, the University of Washington and Harborview Burn Center got together and they created this amazing virtual program called Snow World. And they put these people who are in amazing amounts of pain in these VR headsets, and they were in these snow-covered worlds where snowmen are throwing snowballs, and something really interesting happened. They reported feeling less pain. And some of them were actually even able to get off morphine altogether. And I think that's a huge accomplishment. The second use case I like to talk about is called memorable mice. So there was a guy named John O'Keefe, and in the 70s, he discovered that in your hippocampus, you have what are called GPS cells. And that is your evolutionary response to being able to find your way back home at the end of the day. So when you get in your car, they fire off. When you get to the edge of the block, they fire off. When you get to the highway, they fire off. So you can get home to your ancestral dwelling, whether that's your hut, your longhouse, your cave, your village. And some very smart people ran this as a simulation on mice. And what we found out is that section of the hippocampus that has your GPS cells, when you are in a virtual environment, they fire off more frequently and more randomly. So there's actually an estimated up to 30% higher memory retention when you're in virtual reality. So if you ever want to, say, learn a new skill, learn a new language, try to develop better eye-hand coordination, do it in VR, because it'll be so much easier. The guy actually won a Nobel Prize in 2014 for this, by the way. And the last thing, or the last example I like to bring up, are called happy cows. And in Russia and Turkey, farmers have actually been putting VR headsets on cows, right? Sounds kind of funny, but it's to make them feel like they're in a better environment. It's to make them happier. And what they found out is the average cow went from 22 liters per cycle to 27 liters per cycle, because these VR experiences were changing the way that they saw the world. Yes, it was so they could be processed and their resources that their bodies was making kind of post-apocalyptic a little bit. That's a happy cow. So anyway, My name is Eugene Capon. I am a social media futurist. The metaverse is the entire internet, and I think we just need to work to be harder on the same page. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eugene. That was wonderful. You can take it back there.